God's word as we all read together what is projected on the screen. This is God's word. We are rising up in awe of him who was, who is, and is to come in Judea during the reign of King Herod. About that time, some wise men from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star rose to worship him." King Herod was deeply disturbed when he heard this, as everyone in Jerusalem. He called a meeting of the leading priests and teachers of religious law and asked, "Where is the Messiah supposed to be born?" "In Bethlehem in Judea," they said, "for this is what the prophet wrote, and you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not least among the ruling cities of Judah. For a ruler will come from you, who will be the shepherd of my people Israel." Then Herod a private meeting with the wise men, and he learned from them the time when the first star. Then he told them, "Go to Bethlehem and search carefully for the child. And when you find him, come back and tell me, so that I can go and worship him too." After this interview, the wise men went their way, and the star they had seen in the east guided them to Bethlehem. It went ahead of them and stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child, his mother, Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and gave frankincense and myrrh. Okay, let's go to verse 16. Thank you. Herod, then the wise men had outwitted him. He sent soldiers to kill all boys and around Bethlehem who were 2 years old, based on the wise man's report of first. Herod's brutal action fulfilled what God had spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. A cry was heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning. Rachel weeps her children, refusing to comfort it, for they are dead. Let's have our seats. Thank you for that powerful reading. The Bible tells us that there were wise men who had seen a star, and when they saw the star, they chose to do something about what they had seen. And what they did was not to start worshiping this star, but they followed the star and they went to King Herod, and they went to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is this King of the Jews who has been born? We saw his star rose as it rose, and we have come to worship him." You know, these were men who, by standards of today, we can say they were great men. Because for you and for the Bible to call them wise men, indeed they were wise men. They were not just like, you know, there are people you can, from just by looking at them, you can say this one is not wise. Or they were not born wise. Let me say they were not born wise. But for the Bible to say these people were wise men, they were actually wise men. And so in their wisdom, they see the star, and instead of worshiping the star, they choose to follow that star to go and worship the king who had been born. This afternoon, I want to share with us a costly worship. When we look at these men, inasmuch as they had their own complications as human beings, inasmuch as they had their own businesses as human beings, they lay aside everything that they were having just to go and follow the star so that they can worship the king who had been born. What does this tell us? That for us to worship the king, we must put aside everything that holds us back so that we can worship the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And Makiung, as they are walking and following this star, they were so much used to reading the stars. Actually, if you read the book of Ezekiel and part of the book of Daniel, yesterday I was reading Ezekiel chapter 9, and you discover that God is warning the Israelites about worshiping of the stars, bowing to human beings, bowing to idols. So God, even the sun, God in himself, he does not acknowledge people who worship the stars. I know there are people who here talk about, my star is Capricorn, Jupiter says, it is wrong. Let's agree on that first. And so God decides that inasmuch as I do not acknowledge people following a star and speaking to people through a star, because Jesus is called the bright shining star, I will use this star because these people who are astrologers, they can only acknowledge me through what they are used to. God will always use that which you are used to speak to you at your level. If you are this person who is drawn by money, he can make money to be so scarce so that you can turn your attention to the King of Kings who holds silver and gold. And that day, he knew very well, if I am to speak to these people using waters, they will not seek me. If I'm to speak to these astrologers, maybe using money, they will not seek me because they had money. For you to walk with gold, for all those days searching for a king, they had money. So God chooses to use a symbol of reference that they can easily identify with, which was the star. And so they walk. And as they approach the king, King Herod, they do not even say hi to Herod. Their focus is worshiping the King of Kings. Many of us have gotten lost because our focus is not worshiping the King of Kings, but we choose to worship other things. They are not distracted by, wow, look at the palace. They're not distracted by the number of days they have spent to come and work, and as they are searching for the king. They are not distracted by the number of servants that are there in Herod's house. What is their concern is, where is the king that we may worship him? Today, many people come to church and they're distracted by so many things. People are distracted by the time they have spent in church. People are distracted by the accent. People are distracted by the tribes. People are distracted by the dress code. People are distracted maybe by the languages that we speak. But these people are not distracted. They were men from the east. And if you read in today's geography, and you put the east where these people were, in the ancient days, it was known as Persia. But today, when you place them, it is the current Iraq. So they are coming from Iraq, and we all know the first thing when I mention Iraq, you are thinking of Saddam. Senor, we know that these people, they were a nation that was not chosen by God. They were a people that were not living a life that is sold out to God. But they choose that inasmuch as we have never known about this King of the Jews, inasmuch as we do not have a relationship